Hey, what's up, guys? Mike Tron. I'm gonna have what I'm gonna call a thought moment. All right, and I'm gonna just talk about some things and share, I think, some very, very good perspective. All right, so we got Napoleon right here, just shooting around, just playing some basketball, taking it easy. You know what I mean? Having fun, relaxing, getting some exercise and things like that, right? And learning a skill, a beneficial skill. Which leads me to a very important point in this talk. So, am I, worried about or even trying to encourage Napoleon himself to be a basketball player or a football player or any type of particular athlete or anything like that? No, that's not why I encourage him to practice different athletic things, okay? It's not with the intentions of, I think he's going to be a professional basketball player, or I think he's going to be a professional football player, or a boxer, or anything else, right? Not to say that he can't do those things and that I wouldn't encourage him and that I wouldn't support him in whatever he decides he wants to do. That's positive, all right? But it's not I'm not passionate about be a great athlete so you can become a professional athlete. If that was in the cards, then so be it. If that's what the Most High plan for him is, then so be it. But regardless of that, right? Because a lot of people, you know what I mean, when it comes to stuff like that, when it comes to many things, a lot of people want to do things. People have different intentions, right? And so the reason I like for him to practice athletics and do athletic things and stuff the best that he can is because regardless, these things help you develop as an individual, as a person, and especially as a growing, developing child. They say your brain doesn't fully develop until you're around 25. And so we know anything like that, that's like with growing. They say you stop growing at 21. It's one of those things where, it's all individual based. Who's to say that someone is going to stop growing at 21? Some people can stop growing at 16 or 17. Some people can grow until they 23, 24 perhaps, So same thing with the brain development. Generally, they say 25, which means somebody could be developing their brain until they 27, technically, 28. You know what I mean? Somebody can finish developing their brain at 21, maybe. I don't know, 23 or 24. You know what I mean? So you get the point. So the thing is, I don't think in our society, in our culture, and in the world period, even in science, you know what I mean, and things like that, psychology, in the medical field, in the spiritual field, all those things, I don't think we give enough attention to the fact that generally we are developing until a very late age in comparison to how fast we have to grow up. And so what you do is you have late bloomers, you have people that bloom at different times. You know what I mean? Some people bloom early and they reach their peak early. Some people are what is considered to be late bloomers, okay? Because there's so many different factors in our development. You know what I mean? I think back when I played sports, competitively, and growing up as a kid and things like that, and playing like AAU basketball and stuff. So you go, sometimes you go all around the state, go all around the country sometimes. And so you got a chance to see what you can consider anomalies and things like that. And sometimes you'll play teams, right? And it'll be some team, let's say when we was 11 and 12 years old, it'll be some team that might have had a player, that was known to have a player who was 6'8", and he's only 11 years old or something like that, right? But most of the time, that young, and you're that tall and stuff like that, a lot of those guys, I don't think I ever came across one that was so tall, so young. I'm talking about that young. I ain't talking about maybe in high school or something when they had time to develop and things had time to catch up. I mean, somebody that young. Like, I remember one time, I think we played a guy who was like 6'6" at 12 years old or something like that. But, he was very underdeveloped as far as coordination and athleticism and stuff. He was just very tall. And a lot of times with those guys, if they stick with it, though, they become, their coordination and stuff, their brain catches up with their body eventually, and they become more athletic and things like that. You know what I mean? And that leads me to the point of, that's why it's so important to incorporate athletics for everybody in society, for all our children and stuff. It's not that we think that everybody is going to necessarily be an outstanding athlete and excel in athletics, but everybody, just like being in shape. You know what I mean? All people have different genetics and things like that, and some people may have different peaks and things that is catered towards, their genetics. You know what I mean? So the point is, LeBron James, a certain level of LeBron James athleticism is the fact that he works on things, you know what I mean? But at the same time, a lot of it is just natural. Some people, no matter how much they practice basketball and things like that, they'll never be a LeBron James. You know what I mean? They'll hit their peak. You know what I mean? They can possibly be the best basketball player that they can be, but they may never be Michael Jordan or LeBron James, no matter what they did, right? So you get my point. So the thing is, it's still good though. So should we just say that, if we don't think we have the potential to be the best at something? I guess that's another good way of, a good point to make. Sometimes we look at it in our society, especially in America, you know what I mean? We look at it like if we can't be the best of the best in something, you know what I mean? If that's not the intention, you know what I mean? Then it ain't worth doing it. If you can't find any value in it and it's not worth it, that's not true. You know what I mean? And everything doesn't have to be a competition with somebody else. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can just be competing with yourself and becoming the best you that you can be. You know what I mean? And so that's what I feel like athletics does for everybody, and working on athletics. It's different athletic. Like everything, you don't have to be a competitor. Like you don't have to necessarily use sports as a means of, you have to play football for a team and play against other teams, or play basketball for a team and play against other teams, and be a boxer and box against other opponents and things like that. No, it's if you don't want to do that, if that's not your calling, if that's not your route, if that's not something you're meant to experience on any level, you can still use athleticism to become the best, help do its part in becoming the best individual that you can be. You know what I mean? And becoming the best athlete. So I was saying, I was using that exercising thing as an example, meaning like we wouldn't tell people just because they don't have an athletic body and they're not naturally the most athletic person naturally and things like that, that they shouldn't do anything athletic and do anything that, is an athletic move, so to speak, like exercising and working out and stuff. No, we tell everybody that you need to get your exercise, right? I mean, everybody's not going to be Jay Cutler or Ronnie Coleman. Those are some of the more famous bodybuilders back in the day. Everybody's not going to necessarily take it as seriously, you know what I mean, as those guys do, as far as, it depends on what your goal is, but everybody needs to exercise, right? Everybody's not going to be a LeBron James and playing basketball, but basketball may be something that you enjoy, and you might use it as a means to stay active and to exercise. You know what I mean? And so on and so on, right? So we can do these things as hobbies, and they can have so many different functions, okay? So athletics, right? Not only are, am I certain that he's getting a certain amount of activity and exercise, right? That may not be born, and that's creative and something that can keep him engaged and entertained. So when we do things right, like with exercise and sports and stuff, the reason why sports is a good way to get your exercise is because it's something that's not so mechanical, you know what I mean? And it's a functional thing, like you're doing something that incorporates exercise, that's naturally making you exercise, but you might not even be looking at it like, oh, I'm exercising. You might just enjoy playing a certain game or a sport, but it's not like playing cards where you just sitting down. You see what I'm saying? So it's something you can do, and you're making sure that you're remaining engaged in it, and that you have some type of interest in it, and it's keeping you moving and giving you your exercise, right? And all the therapy that comes along with that. Exercise can be therapeutic, and whatever you're doing to exercise. So if you enjoy basketball, you know what I mean, why not shoot some basketball and things like that, to enjoy yourself, alleviate stress, possibly clear your mind. You know what I mean? I remember growing up, being back here many a days, and part of me becoming a pretty good basketball player when I was younger and things like that is just the fact that I would use it as, I'd be back here working on my visualization, even things that I didn't realize till later on that I was doing, that it helped me with, you know what I mean? But helped me become a better version of myself, you know what I mean? It helped me with visualization, realizing that now, being back here. And that's why I always have been good with my imagination. I think I've always been a pretty good imaginative person and creative person and artistic person, you know what I mean? I think those are qualities and traits of me, you know what I mean, that can help describe me. And so, but being back here, visualizing, I always try to tell him, like, you're working on your visualization with this too, which helps with like spirituality and manifestation and things like that, it all, you see how it all incorporates. Like, if you're starting off playing, a lot of people who started off with things like a sport like basketball and stuff, and if they did practice a lot by themselves, they are probably naturally gained a good knack for imagination, or it tested and it strengthened and it cultivated their imagination more than if they didn't. Because when you're practicing by yourself, a lot of times you're doing what? You are envisioning somebody in front of you, trying to defend you and stuff. It helps with, see how it naturally helps with things like that? And your creativity and your moves. Like, as you can see, he was just, going, he's starting to get way more comfortable with, you could tell, and getting better with his visualization and understanding it from that perspective, because you can see the way he's practicing now. When he practices, he's kind of enjoying himself, being creative, moving side to side, faking one way, going another way, you know what I mean, faking a pass, faking a shot, faking, you see him, he's getting that, so you could tell he's starting to have fun and be mentally engaged with what he's doing, which is a good thing, right? From a therapeutic standpoint, doing something that you enjoy, having fun. We know he's exercising, moving around, things like that. Now, we know he's helping with his, manifestation, visualization, you know what I mean, and things like that. Having an imagination, or maintaining imagination, developing imagination, strengthening the imagination, right? It also helps you with strategy, game plan, and things like that. Things that you have to incorporate in just your regular day-to-day life, no matter what you end up doing or being in your life. You know what I mean? Things like that. Just universal, I guess you could say traits and skills and things like that, that things can help develop, that we commonly don't talk about, we don't think about, we don't look at it from these point of views and perspective. And we know I'm always trying to provide intent, you know what I mean? Because I think people can understand you and feel you better, you know what I mean, when they know where you coming from and why you doing something, you know what I mean? As opposed to them trying to figure out a reason why you doing something, then, sometimes if you give the intent, or a different intent, a different way of looking at things, then you can see the value of things, and you can see the method, you know what I mean, to the madness a lot of times, like, you know what I mean? So, like somebody could say, why does he have him practicing? I ain't saying nobody gonna really say it, but let's say if somebody did say, why does he have him practicing basketball? He's never going to go to the NBA or nothing like this. Like, what? See, that's not the intention. You see what I'm saying? Like, or why is he doing this? He's not, you know what I mean? Like, so when you state the intent, You know what I mean? Then you're like, oh, now we see why, the value in this, and, helps people with their thought. That's why I said this is a thought video. You know what I mean? What else? So yeah, helping with visualization. To reiterate, like, how is something this simple, right? You know what I mean? I feel like this is a creative, artistic video. You know what I mean? But how is something as simple as this, have so many benefits that we might overlook? Okay, now you starting to look at this different than just a kid on camera just shooting around in his backyard. You got to give intention to things too. You know what I mean? So you can know what you're getting out of it. Sometimes something can just be enjoyable. Like when I was a kid, I just would have said I like playing basketball. And then early enough in life, I had real hoop dreams. You know what I mean? And so it was a different mentality back then anyway, because at that point I had a desire and possibly the potential, being so young and things like that, anything could happen. And I was fairly decent and things like that. I was pretty good. Anything, who knows what could happen. So when I was a kid, I had hoop dreams, And so, I think it just helps you with part. Because I want to get back to, it helps you. Okay, he's working on footwork. We know that, right? Athleticism and brain coordination. That's how I want to get back to stuff like that. So, I'm just more so looking at it like, I don't care how naturally athletic him or anybody else is, right? I'm looking at it like, me trying to help develop him into the best him that he can be, right? I'm looking at it like it's even more I'm even more grateful, and it's even more of a blessing to be able to have somebody that I can work with, you know what I mean, and try to help them, be the best them that they can be in all different ways, you know what I mean? And so the fact that he may not be Deion Sanders or LeBron James as far as a raw athlete, you know what I mean? That's fine, because he does have athletic qualities and abilities that can be, and things like that can be worked on. And it's fun to help develop something in somebody, you know what I mean? Especially your own child, because that is your role as a parent too. It ain't just about clothes, shoes, food, you know what I mean, and a roof over your head, you know what I mean? It's so much more to being a good parent. It's a difference in being a mom and a dad and then being a mother and a father, right? So a lot of what being a parent has nothing to do with anything physical. A lot of times it's just about the attention you give your child, you know what I mean, or a person. A lot of times it's just about, the instruction and the one-on-one and, the passion that you have, the patience and things like that. You know what I mean? The willingness and the ability, because a lot of people nowadays, don't have the ability to be as hands-on, to be as committed, emotionally and psychologically and things like that, and physically, you know what I mean, with their children. So I'm not judging anything. I'm just saying this is just things to be mindful of. So, just like with psyche and things like that and emotions and stuff, and trying to help him be the strongest person he could be psychologically and emotionally, and the best person he could be psychologically and emotionally and things like that. It's the same thing with athletic development, like I said. So, that's what I mean. Like, because I don't want to use the specific examples, but like I said, it's not that he has to develop into LeBron James, or Deion Sanders or Usain Bolt, think of, as many great athletes, world-class athletes at some point in their lives. It's about helping him be the best athlete he can be, and And why it matters for him to be the best athlete he can be, because in order for him to be the best athlete he could be, that means he's maximized his potential in other aspects that will translate in other areas of life. You know what I mean? So, being the best athlete he can be, in a lot of regards, it kind of synchronizes and it's synonymous with him being in some of the best physical shape that he can be in, right? It can't hurt anybody to be the best athlete they can be, for them to be in the best shape that they can be in, so they can, be in position. You know what I mean? Be healthy enough and in the best shape that they could be in, so they could be in position to be a good athlete in whatever it is that they're doing, right? So I know that if he's working on that, staying in shape, being in shape, moving, exercising, then I know he's, one step closer, you know what I mean, to maximizing his potential, or realizing his potential as he continues to develop, and being in shape and being healthy, and setting that as a foundation. You know what I mean? That health is important, you know what I mean? And teaching him that early for himself. And hopefully that could be something that sticks with him throughout the remainder of his life when he's fully an adult. You know what I mean? So if you plant the seed of being healthy and being health conscious, about what you put in your body, and taking care of yourself, eating right, exercising, supplementing, you know what I mean? And all the things, the same thing with psychology and emotions, you know what I mean? Knowing how to manage your emotions, you know what I mean? Your thoughts and stuff like that. All this stuff helps us, become the best versions of ourselves. So it's more about stuff like that, you know what I mean? And so with the brain developing, you know what I mean, I feel like it helps with not necessarily his athleticism towards let's get good at this, or the best you can get at this, because we're going to make a run at the NBA or something like that. No, it's because whatever you decide to do in life, or be in life, or however you decide to experience life, you know what I mean? The more athletic and coordinated you can be, you know what I mean, then it's probably gonna help you in everything, you know what I mean, that has to do with your life. Then it would hurt you, you know what I mean, or if you didn't. So why not, Also, it helps you with being able to develop your brain at its best, its highest capacity and potential. That makes sense. So, as a kid, in your golden years of developing your brain, and when you're younger and stuff, if because you may have never been the most athletically inclined person naturally, and you feel like, whatever, you never really had the desire, you're not big on working out and being active and stuff, especially in today's age where, we have so many things that can keep us sedentary and, and stagnant a lot, and not moving. We could be stuck on our phones. We could be stuck in front of a TV, whatever, you know what I mean? You might not realize how, you might be hindering your potential development, especially being younger, when you don't allow yourself to, do things that work on the development of coordination and rhythm and, and movement and synchronization and stuff like that. It's not about, it's not about the sport itself. It's about the things that can translate. I always talk about, or I have talked about, layers of things. And there's always something you can get at, even when you're talking. There's layers to messages and words and stuff like that. And some of us, that's something that can be developed. Some of us have developed, or just some of us have natural gifts and we develop it, where you're able to see the multi-dimensional nature of everything, and you're able to teach through many different things. Okay, you can teach different concepts and teach different, wisdom and different information through something else. So this is a sport, but it's a lot about sports that can translate to other aspects of life. You know what I mean? Whether it's team sports, or whether it's just, playing a sport or practicing a sport, or or anything like that. You know, it's aspects of it that could translate to many different things in life. You know what I mean? That could be metaphorical, parabolical. You know what I mean? And things like that. Does that make sense? So, hopefully, I think that should be enough. You know what I mean? Hopefully this was a real good thought video. You know what I mean? It makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? Give some context, you know. And it's just something that can inspire other people and just inspire thought and inspire, you know, a vibe, inspire changes that need to be made, or just ideas and ways of doing things, you know, and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm so proud of him when we do work on stuff and things like that, because I love to watch his development and to be a part of it. You know what I mean? To watch him make improvements, you know, to watch him grow, you know what I mean, stronger, you know, healthier, smarter. You'll see his development, you know what I mean, a young kid and stuff. And it helps me in so many different ways, being a parent, because he teaches. Oh, that's another good point I was going to make. You know, becoming a parent, especially when you are very engaged with your children and things like that, and you have the ability to be engaged with your children, you learn a lot about yourself that you couldn't have known otherwise. You know what I mean? Your children teach you a lot about yourself on a certain level, you know. And when we learn to look at it that way too, we'll take parenting a little differently, I think, in a beneficial way, in a good way, in a productive way, for the children and the parents. You know what I mean? For both souls and spirits and individuals' development. You know what I mean? Because we're as quote unquote adults, we are still capable and should be developing too. You know what I mean? We can't. You know, that's something that I think is pretty ubiquitous in society too. As I think, you know, underneath everything, we got this idea that, you know, we peak and we're not learning no more, and we know, sometimes we could think we know everything, and, you know, and we just get set in our ways, and we kind of get stuck as adults. You know, we should always, for so many different reasons, beneficial reasons, we should always look at it like there's always something new we can develop and learn and things like that. So we don't hit a wall. I think psychologically that can, or we do hit that wall sometimes, you know, having that mentality, you know, you can work yourself through it or whatever. You know, I think that helps a lot with just on so many different dimensions. Like I said, everything is multifaceted, multi-dimensional ways of looking at things, and look at it like, even with your physical body, I think what contributes to aging faster and stuff like that, something we might be figuring out, you know, is that you don't want to get stuck and stagnated and set in your ways mentally all the time. You know what I mean? Gotta be willing to adapt and learn new things. You know what I mean? Incorporate new things and stuff like that. And I think that helps keeps us young, you know, mentally, physically, and spiritually. You know what I mean? You notice how the older a lot of people are. Don't you know how, you know, can't you, have you always noticed that some of the most stubborn people are, you know, older people? And it could be younger people too, because sometimes the younger you are, it's just like, you know, it's just like what they say, like, you know, you're a baby twice. Once when you come into the world, and then once when you leave it. You know what I mean? If you're fortunate enough to get real old, and you know, and you got to be taken care of again or something like that. But that's a whole nother story too. Is that, you see, you know what I mean? Is that something that that necessarily has to happen, or can we age gracefully and have quality of life for longer, as opposed to just living for a long time, and then, you know, you 90, but, you know, you go to the bathroom by yourself, you know, something like that. You know what I mean? I think that helps keep us young psychologically and spiritually, and then that translates to us physically as well. Multifaceted, multi-dimensional way of looking at it, you know. So staying willing to learn, eager to learn, you know, as much as possible, having a zeal for learning new things and trying, you know, different things and challenging yourself in different ways, it can be very beneficial. You know what I mean? As far as developing, because anything, that's a part of, you can say that's a part of nature, I guess, in life, where once something stops developing, then perhaps that's why, things die too, is there's no more development. You know what I mean? And so I think you can kind of psych, yourself out. And I don't want to say psych nature. I just think that's a code, maybe, or just a way of looking at things that, it works out that way, to where, if you keep on developing, then there's something about, I guess, life itself that sees fit for you to continue, maybe, because you're constantly developing into something, so it's not over yet. But I think on a subconscious level, what happens is we think we finished developing and stuff and things like that, and then we program ourselves to think that there's nothing else to attain or develop, and then subconsciously we kind of maybe, kill ourselves faster, per se, as a species, period. Yeah, so man, hopefully this was just a very thought-provoking video for anybody who sat through it, and it sparked interest early enough on that you was able to continue and still be with me on this video at this point. And 30 something minutes is still short enough in comparison to a lot of videos, but it's definitely one of my longer ones. All right, guys, peace. Hopefully you enjoyed watching Napoleon shoot around too. And hopefully all this made good sense.